Have you ever been sitting in the passenger seat of a car and you see the driver drifting just a tiny bit too close to the edge of the lane?
Oh, yeah.
Terrifying.
Right, and your hand instinctively reaches out, like hovering right over their steering wheel.
Exactly.
Grabbing it would be an absolute disaster, but the urge to just, take control right then is almost physically painful.
It really is, yeah.
Yeah.
Because in that split second, I mean, your brain's threat detection center is just screaming. It's telling you that your immediate intervention is literally the only thing standing between safety and total chaos.
Wow, yeah.
You're just entirely convinced that taking control is a survival requirement.
Right, and usually, when we talk about that specific urge, we're talking about traffic. But today, we're looking at why we all have that exact same impulse in our relationships, our families, and our workplaces.
Which is everywhere, really. Everywhere. So, welcome to this custom deep dive. Our mission today is to explore this surprisingly simple shortcut to reclaiming massive amounts of mental and emotional energy. And we are diving into Mel Robbins' explosive bestseller, The Let Them Theory.
It's such a fascinating topic.
It is. We're analyzing an entire suite of information here, chapter breakdowns, podcast scripts, psychology profiles, just to figure out how a painfully simple two-word phrase became this massive cultural phenomenon.
And, the scale of that phenomenon is just staggering.
It really is.
We are talking about a book that sold over 7 million copies. It spent 30 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list.
That's crazy.
It even secured an endorsement from Oprah Winfrey, who, called it one of the best self-help books she has ever read.
Wow.
And I think what makes it so pervasive is that it targets this universal modern exhaustion, just the profound drain of trying to manage other people's opinions, change their behavior, and, absorb all their stress.
Yeah, and the proposed solution to all that exhaustion is simply saying, let them.
Right. 2 words.
Just 2 words.
Yeah.
But knowing human nature, dropping the steering wheel like that is incredibly difficult.
Oh, absolutely.
So to understand why we need to let go, we really have to look at the biology of why we clutch so tightly in the first place. And the origin story of this whole movement, it illustrates that perfectly.
It really does. It's so relatable.
Yeah, because it didn't happen in some sterile psychology lab. It happened at a chaotic, hyper-stressful pre-prom party.
Which is, frankly, a textbook environment for triggering a micromanaging response.
Oh, for sure.
You have high stakes, tight timelines, and a group of teenagers whose frontal lobes are, still developing.
So they're a little unpredictable.
Highly unpredictable.
Right. So Mel Robbins describes herself in the book as acting like your typical psycho micromanaging mother in this moment.
Naturally.
It's the night of her teenage son Oakley's prom. The clock is ticking down. The kids have no dinner reservations.
Oh, no.
They have no umbrellas. It is pouring rain outside. And they suddenly decide they want to walk to a taco stand.
To a parent trying to orchestrate this flawless, memorable evening, that scenario just registers as a catastrophic failure.
Exactly. It's the equivalent of the driver drifting out of the lane.
Right.
So she feels that familiar wave of panic rising in her chest. She's ready to take over, make some calls, force a restaurant reservation, and just manufacture a perfect outcome.
Like we all do.
But then her daughter Sawyer steps in. Sawyer grabs her mom's arm, literally digs her fingernails into her bicep and says, "Mom, let him ruin his tennis shoes. Let them go out in the rain. It's their prom, not yours."
Wow. Yeah, that phrase right there. It's their prom, not yours. That is the cognitive interrupt.
The cognitive interrupt.
Right. It breaks the loop because what Robbins realized in that moment is that our relentless need to manage others is, it's rarely about actually helping them.
Wait, really?
Yeah. It is almost entirely driven by our own deep-seated intolerance for uncertainty.
Oh, that stings a bit.
It does. We attempt to soothe our own internal anxiety by micromanaging external factors. We have this false belief that if we can just, get our partner to act a certain way or get our kids to follow a specific plan, we will finally feel secure.
But it's a total illusion.
Complete illusion.
Like sitting in the passenger seat and frantically grabbing the steering wheel doesn't prevent a crash.
Yeah.
It actually causes one.
Exactly. You create tension, resentment, conflict, all instead of connection. Psychologically speaking, the only true controllable elements in any situation are your thoughts, your actions, and how you process your own emotions.
It's just those 3.
Just those. Attempting to control anything outside of that triad is just a futile expenditure of energy, and it often leads to this highly destructive dynamic known as the anxious avoidant trap.
Yeah, I was looking at the mechanics of the anxious avoidant trap in the sources, and it seems like a really cruel paradox.
It is.
Like the harder the anxious person tries to control the situation to feel safe, the more they actually trigger the other person to just run away.
Yeah, that is the exact mechanism, yeah. Anxious individuals who seek closeness as a way to regulate their nervous system are frequently drawn to avoidant individuals.
You want the opposite, right?
Right. Avoidant people need space and autonomy to regulate theirs. So when the anxious person senses distance, their anxiety spikes. They try to control the situation to force closeness.
And that backfires.
Spectacularly. That controlling behavior triggers the avoidant person's deep fear of being trapped, which prompts them to pull away even further.
Oh, wow.
And then that withdrawal spikes the anxious person's fear of abandonment, causing them to cling even harder. It just becomes this self-perpetuating cycle of emotional burnout.
So saying let them just, it stops that.
Exactly. It acts as a circuit breaker. It immediately halts that escalating loop.
The immediate side effect of walking away, though, and this was interesting, is this unexpected complication.
Yes, the void.
Right. When Robin shared this prom story online and it went massively viral, her daughter Kendall started analyzing the thousands of responses pouring in.
And what does she find?
Well, people were dropping the steering wheel, but they were suddenly reporting that they felt incredibly lonely.
Ah, yeah. That makes perfect sense neurologically. When you abruptly stop a long-term behavioral pattern like overfunctioning or micromanaging, you actually experience a dopamine drop.
That dopamine drop.
Yeah. Your brain gets accustomed to the chaotic rush of fixing problems and inserting yourself into other people's dramas. Removing that constant stimulation creates a huge emotional vacuum.
So they just felt empty.
Exactly. People felt like they were giving up on their relationships. They were just standing there empty-handed, unsure of their own purpose.
Okay, so to fill that gap, the framework actually relies on a second half.
Crucial second half.
Right. Part one is let them, which is the art of release detaching your energy from their behavior. But part two is let me, which is the path to active self-agency.
Because without let me, you are really just withdrawing.
Just isolating yourself.
Right. With let me, you are redirecting all that energy you used to spend on them back onto yourself.
Let's put this in a real-world context for you listening. Say a friend cancels plans on you at the very last minute.
Oh, the worst.
It is.
Huh.
The old version of you would spiral, feel rejected, maybe send a passive-aggressive text, trying to induce some guilt.
Classic reaction.
But under this framework, part one, let them, means you accept they're showing you their current priorities, and you just let them have their evening without a fight.
But if you stop there...
Yeah, if you stop there, you just sit alone on your couch, feeling miserable.
Exactly.
So part two, let me cues you to ask.
Huh.
Given this reality, what can I do right now to take care of myself? Let me dive into that book I've been meaning to read. Let me call a different friend and go grab dinner.
Or, consider a workplace scenario. Say your boss comes into the office visibly grumpy and completely uncommunicative.
Which happens a lot.
Right. The natural instinct is to try and fix their mood, or worse, internalize it, wondering what you did wrong.
Oh, I do that all the time.
Most people do. But applying the framework, let them have their bad mood. Their emotional regulation is not your responsibility.
That's powerful.
And then, let me focus on the specific deliverables I can control today. Let me put on my noise-canceling headphones and protect my own psychological peace.
I do have to push back here for a second, though, because reading through the sources, I hit a bit of a mental roadblock.
Okay, what is it?
Doesn't heavily relying on let them just turn you into a passive doormat? I mean, if your partner is consistently treating you poorly, or a coworker is actively undermining you, just think, oh, well, let them. Sounds a lot like tolerating abuse.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because it is crucial to delineate between radical acceptance and apathy.
Okay.
This tool is designed for regaining power, not relinquishing it. Let them functions as a temporary boundary to conserve your sanity. You are not condoning the toxic behavior. You are simply acknowledging reality instead of fighting it.
So you're just not arguing with what's actually happening.
Exactly. You stop the exhausting, futile attempt to convince someone to treat you better. And by dropping that rope, you free up massive amounts of cognitive energy to execute the let me phase.
Ah, I see.
Right. So if a partner is consistently terrible, let them reveal who they truly are. But let me use my energy to consult a therapist, pack my bags, and decide to leave.
Oh, wow. Okay, so it's shifting energy away from a fight against an unchangeable reality and funneling it entirely toward your own agency.
Exactly.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting to me. While this feels like a very modern, viral pop psychology hack, the mechanics behind it are actually incredibly ancient.
Yes, the packaging is totally optimized for social media, but the engine driving it is anchored in decades of clinical psychology.
Specifically, this concept of the locus of control, right?
Right, the locus of control.
I like to think of it like this. Having an external locus of control is like being a thermometer.
Okay, I like that.
You are purely reacting to the temperature of the room. If the room is angry, you heat up and get angry. If the room is chaotic, you fluctuate and get chaotic. The
Love
system
that.
turns you into the thermostat. You set your own internal climate, and you maintain it regardless of the weather outside.
That thermometer analogy perfectly captures the physiological toll of an external locus of control. People who operate this way live in a state of chronic hypervigilance.
Because they're always reacting.
Always. They believe their emotional state is entirely dictated by outside forces, which means they are always scanning the environment for threats.
Sounds exhausting.
It is. Shifting to an internal locus, becoming the thermostat, means anchoring to self-influence. And cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, utilizes this heavily.
Like Dr. Jade Thomas from the source materials.
Yes, Dr. Thomas. Clinical psychologists spend entire sessions helping clients categorize their worries into controllable versus uncontrollable buckets. Training the brain to distinguish between what you can affect and what you must release is a gold standard treatment for clinical anxiety.
And the roots go back even further than modern therapy. Psychologist Sabina Reed literally labels "let them" a Stoic mantra.
Oh, absolutely.
You can trace this exact mental model back centuries to ancient Stoic philosophers like Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius.
Right, the original Stoics.
Yeah, they taught that tying your peace of mind to the actions of others is basically a recipe for misery. You have to disregard what others do and focus solely on your own will.
It equally mirrors fundamental Buddhist principles of non-attachment, too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The core tenet there is that suffering arises directly from resisting reality, from deeply wanting people or situations to be different than they currently are. Releasing that resistance eliminates the suffering.
You even see it in addiction recovery models like Alcoholics Anonymous. They have this concept of detachment with love.
Yes, which is so profound.
Because you can profoundly care for someone without trying to rescue them from the natural consequences of their own actions.
Which, paradoxically, is often the most loving action you can take. Rescuing someone repeatedly prevents them from developing their own locus of control.
Now, when you look at the psychology profiles from the analysis pack regarding who struggles with this the most, it gets a little uncomfortable
It really does.
because you immediately recognize yourself or someone you love. So for you listening, I want to ask, which of these three profiles do you see in the mirror? The analysis categorizes these control styles into the micromanager, the people pleaser, and the righteous judge.
Let's examine the underlying fears driving each of those, because it's so revealing.
Let's start with the micromanager.
Also known as the anxious fixer. They feel this intense, crushing responsibility for the ecosystem around them.
These are the people organizing the group vacations, right?
Organizing vacations, mediating family disputes, and they inherently treat everyone else as just slightly incompetent.
Ouch.
But their controlling behavior is really driven by an absolute terror of chaos. For them, practicing let them is agonizing because it requires them to literally sit on their hands and watch people struggle or make mistakes without swooping in to save the day.
Okay, then you have the people pleaser, or the externally referenced empaths.
Yeah.
Their entire sense of self-worth is outsourced. They are hyper-vigilant to the micro-expressions and moods of everyone in the room, driven by just a paralyzing fear of rejection.
So they'll abandon their own needs instantly to avoid disappointing someone else.
Exactly. So for the people pleaser, adopting let them is a seismic shift because it acts as permission to be disliked.
Which is terrifying for them.
It forces them to accept that they cannot control another person's perception of them, demanding they build internal validation instead.
And finally, there is the righteous judge or the controlled moralizer.
I definitely know a few of these.
We all do. These individuals operate by a remarkably rigid internal code. They have a fixed mindset that their specific way of loading the dishwasher or managing a project or just existing in the world is the objectively correct way.
Right.
So they become highly judgmental when others fail to meet their standards. For the righteous judge, let them is an exercise in psychological flexibility.
Accepting that their way isn't the only way.
Exactly. It is the painful acceptance that the world will not end if a task is done imperfectly by someone else.
But regardless of whether you're a micromanager, a people pleaser, or a righteous judge, a massive question remains here.
What's that?
We can't just ignore everyone around us. I mean, there are times, especially in a professional setting or when parenting, where you actively need to affect change.
Sure.
So how do you influence someone if you've completely given up trying to control them?
Well, influence and control actually utilize entirely different psychological pathways. Control relies on force and induces resistance. Influence relies on autonomy and induces cooperation.
Okay, let's unpack this. The framework introduces the ABC loop of influence. A, B, C. Let's break down the mechanics of why this loop actually works, starting with A. Apologize and ask.
Right. When you approach someone to change a behavior, their defensive walls are usually already up.
Naturally.
By opening with an apology for your own part in the dynamic, even if it's just apologizing for bringing up a stressful topic, you signal vulnerability. You then ask open-ended questions about their experience rather than lecturing them on their failures.
So you're transforming from an adversary into a collaborator,
Exactly.
which leads to B, back off.
Yeah.
And I have to say, for the micromanager profile, this step sounds like pure torture.
Oh, it's the hardest part.
You've just asked them the question, they've shared their problem, and your instinct is to immediately fix it. But backing off means you give them space to process. You don't pressure them. You leave the void open.
And the biological mechanism behind why back off works is fascinating. When you immediately jump in and tell someone what to do, their autonomic nervous system often flags it as a threat to their autonomy.
Triggering a fight or flight response.
Right. They become defensive, and their amygdala basically hijacks their reasoning. But by physically and verbally backing off, you allow their cortisol levels to drop.
You create a safe environment.
Yes. You create an environment where their own prefrontal cortex can engage, allowing them to arrive at the solution themselves. It feels like torture to the fixer, but it is essential for the other person's growth.
Okay, so if you can survive the agonizing silence of the back-off phase, you finally get to celebrate. You celebrate any positive movement or realization they make on their own, no matter how incremental.
Celebration acts as positive reinforcement. It floods their brain with dopamine associated with their own autonomous choice, which makes them significantly more likely to repeat the positive behavior in the future.
Wow.
So the ABC loop: apologize and ask, back off, celebrate. It allows you to guide someone's trajectory without ever putting your hands on their steering wheel.
It sounds incredibly effective in theory. But with over 7 million copies sold and massive social media saturation, this theory has naturally attracted significant criticism.
Of course, it always happens.
And we want to look at the blind spots here because no framework is bulletproof.
Right. The most prominent critique challenges the originality and attribution of the concept.
Right. I saw this in the notes. Critics point to a controversy involving a poet named Cassie Phillips.
Yes, Cassie Phillips. She authored a viral Let Them poem prior to the book's explosion. So the argument is that Robbins effectively rebranded existing viral content along with ancient Stoic philosophy without adequate acknowledgement of its modern or historical origins.
There is also a strong critique regarding the lack of scientific rigor. One commentator blatantly dismissed it as a, and I quote, lucrative, surface-level life mantra that is in no way, shape, or form theoretical.
That's a harsh critique.
Yeah, they argue it leans entirely on relatable anecdotes and emotional resonance rather than peer-reviewed clinical data.
I mean, it is undeniably a practical heuristic rather than a formalized clinical modality. But perhaps the most profound critique focuses on the potential for weaponization.
Weaponization.
Yes. Several cultural commentators, including a notable Catholic critique, argue that true peace and societal progress come from loving, active engagement with others, not detached observation.
See, this is the mental roadblock I keep hitting. If I'm just acting as a thermostat for my own peace, aren't I just ignoring actual problems in the world?
It's a valid concern.
If we just say let them, to every flaw in our partners, every toxic trait in our friends, or every injustice in our society, do we lose the beautiful friction of relationships? Do we stop fighting for things that actually matter?
It is a precarious tightrope walk, for sure. If the theory is misused, it can absolutely become a convenient excuse for selfishness or apathy or abandoning people who genuinely need help.
That isn't the goal at all.
No. The theory was designed specifically to break patterns of codependency and overfunctioning in healthy adults. It was never intended to advocate for ignoring systemic issues or genuine suffering.
Which underscores why the let me component isn't just an add-on, it's a structural necessity.
Absolutely.
If you only do let them, you slide right into nihilism. The let me ensures you remain actively engaged in your own values and the world around you, just from a place of agency rather than a place of panic.
Synthesizing the entire analysis, integrating this theory is essentially a 30-day psychological rewiring process.
30 days, okay?
It involves tracking and consistently taking the grounding action of let me.
It's like shifting your emotional transmission into neutral. The engine of the world is still revving and roaring all around you, but you're no longer letting it drag you forcefully forward.
That's a great way to put it. And the ultimate psychological reward for that practice is transitioning into what the literature calls the secure navigator persona.
The secure navigator.
Yes. A secure navigator possesses a rock-solid internal locus of control. They can have a friend who is chronically, frustratingly late to every event, and they can still genuinely enjoy that friend's company.
Because they've stopped managing them.
Exactly. They have entirely stopped trying to manage the tardiness. They let the friend be late, they bring a book, and they enjoy the coffee anyway. They adapt their environment to protect their peace.
You just stop forcing the puzzle pieces together. As the book notes, the people who truly want to be in your life will make room for you. You use let them for peace, and you use let me for power.
Ultimately, you are submitting your resignation as the general manager of the universe.
I love that. But that resignation leaves you with a final, slightly terrifying reality to mull over.
Oh, definitely.
Let's say you successfully implement this. You stop being the fixer. You stop being the anxious manager, the desperate pleaser, or the righteous judge of everyone in your orbit. Who are you? Once you strip away the exhausting, full-time job of trying to control the universe, you are left standing in front of a completely blank canvas. What exactly are you going to paint on it?
It forces you to confront your own identity, independent of the utility you provide to others. It is daunting, but it is the definition of liberation.
So, to you listening, the next time you find yourself in that passenger seat, feeling your hand hovering over the steering wheel, your heart racing, ready to grab it, take a breath, drop your hand, let him drive, and ask yourself where you actually want to go next.